You ever get that feeling like behind the scenes at every school, there's this like unseen force
Hmm.
helping students, navigate all the ups and downs of just being a kid?
Yeah, totally.
That's where education welfare officers come in, right? Or EWOs, as I guess we'd say for short. Today, we're taking a deep dive into this honestly essential but often overlooked role. And we're pulling back the curtain using, honestly, some really, really great insights from RoleCatcher.
Yeah, and what I think is so fascinating about this role is that it's about so much more than just like grades and homework and all that stuff. We're talking about like understanding the whole student, like their family life, their mental well-being, even just like their social challenges, and then figuring out how to best support them and all of that.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that a bit.
Hmm.
I think when most people hear education welfare officer, they might picture, like, I don't know, a traditional guidance counselor, like someone who helps you plan your classes or whatever. But it sounds like we're talking about something much broader. Am I right?
Absolutely, yeah. Imagine a student, let's just like call him Alex, right?
Hmm.
Alex is struggling in school, his grades are slipping, he's like withdrawn from his friends, all that stuff. An EWO would not only help Alex address those academic challenges, which, those are still important, obviously, but they also go deeper. They might like uncover that he's dealing with, a really difficult family situation at home, or maybe he's struggling with anxiety or something, right? Which obviously requires a totally different approach.
So they're like educational detectives in a
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
like uncovering the root causes behind what might at first just seem like, I don't know, just like surface level issues.
Yeah, precisely. They're like trained to connect the dots between a student's behavior, their academic performance, their overall well-being, all of it. They might work with, going back to Alex, they might work with him directly, offering counseling, connecting him with mental health resources, all of that. But they also act as liaisons, collaborating with, his teachers, his parents, even external agencies to kind of create this whole network of support around him.
Wow, see, I hadn't even considered that, like the collaborative aspect of it. It's
Yeah.
not just about like working in isolation, right? They're
Yeah.
really building these support systems. That's so interesting. And that makes their work environment pretty unique too, I imagine, right?
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, while you'll find EWOs in, the places you'd expect,
Yeah.
schools, colleges, universities, they could also be working in community centers, family homes. I mean, even courtrooms, depending on the situation, right? Because remember, they're dealing with this huge range of challenges. We're talking about everything from like learning disabilities and bullying to, stuff like poverty and abuse. So yeah, it's really varied.
Yeah, that's a really, really wide range of responsibilities. And it sounds incredibly rewarding, but also like incredibly demanding.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's definitely not your typical 9 to 5 job, that's for sure. These professionals often need to be available outside of, normal school hours, responding to crises as they arise, all that. Remember, Alex, let's say he needs like immediate support, an EWO might have to step in right away, even if it's
Mhm.
the weekend or whatever. It's about being there and providing that timely intervention when it matters most.
Yeah, wow. It's clear that this is not just a job, right? It's a
Nice.
vocation. You need a very, very specific set of skills and honestly, just a whole lot of dedication to do this kind of work well.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something that we see reflected in like all the pros and cons the sources are highlighting, right? Like on the one hand, you have the flexibility of often like setting your own hours. You have the deep satisfaction of like knowing you're actually making a difference in these young people's lives. You have the opportunity to work with this really diverse group of people every day. So that's all really great.
Yeah, those are some pretty compelling perks. But what about the other side of that coin, right? What are some of the challenges that kind of come with the territory here?
Well, I mean, as we kind of already talked about, the workload can be really, really heavy, and there are often limited career progression opportunities within the role itself. And I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. Dealing with challenging behavior, sensitive situations, and sometimes even, honestly, tragic circumstances, it can take a toll emotionally. It's a career that requires, resilience, empathy, and honestly, a genuine passion for advocating for young people. Like, you really, really have to want to do this work.
It strikes me that this role like probably looks really different now than it did, even just a few years ago. Schools are changing, the things that students are dealing with are evolving, and we can't ignore like the big thing, right? Technology. Like
Yeah.
how is all that shaping the role of the EWO today?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And you're totally right to bring up technology because it really has been like a seismic shift. But one of the other big changes that we're seeing, and this is something that I'm really passionate about, is this growing emphasis on like mental health and well-being in schools, it's not enough to just focus on academics anymore. We have to think about the whole child, and that's where EWOs are becoming so, so vital.
So it's not just about, like, helping a kid get their grades up anymore, right? It's
Mhm.
about giving them, like, the emotional tools and the social skills, I guess, to navigate, like you said, this really complex world.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think sometimes people like hear mental health and they think it's just about, diagnosed disorders or whatever, which is obviously a huge part of it. But it's also about things like, building resilience, helping kids manage stress, teaching them how to like have healthy coping mechanisms, all of that. It's about creating a school environment where students feel like supported and empowered to, thrive.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of a complex world, I mean, obviously, technology plays such a huge role there, right? Like both in the challenges that students are facing, but then also, hopefully, in the solutions that are available to help support them.
Oh, absolutely. It's like this double-edged sword, right? Like on the
Yeah.
one hand, you have things like, cyberbullying, which is awful, and all the pressure that comes from social media and just, making sure that kids are safe online. But then at the same time, technology is giving EWOs all these incredible new tools to connect with students and provide support in ways that, like, we never could have imagined before.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, can you give me some examples of how that's actually playing out in schools? I feel like it's changing so fast.
One of the things that I think is super cool is the rise of these like AI-powered platforms.
Yeah.
So they're designed to kind of like identify students who might be at risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can like analyze all these different data points, right? Like a student's grades, their attendance, even in some cases their online activity, and they can use that to flag potential warning signs, like stuff that a teacher might not even pick up on. And that allows EWOs to like intervene proactively and provide support before a situation escalates into something really serious.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So it's like instead of just, reacting to a crisis, they can actually like anticipate needs and maybe even like stop some of those issues from happening in the first place, which is huge.
Mhm.
I mean, it's making me realize that like being an EWO isn't just about having the right personality, right?
Yeah.
You have to really stay on top of things when it comes to like technology and these new approaches to student support.
100%. This is not a field where you can just like learn something once and then you're good. It's all about continuous learning. Like EWOs might be going to workshops on, I don't know, new counseling techniques, or they might be like reading up on the latest child protection policies. I mean, I've even heard of some EWOs who are using virtual reality now for things like, social emotional learning and stuff. It's crazy.
It sounds like you really have to be a lifelong learner to do this kind of work well.
Yeah.
So for anyone who's listening who's like, this sounds like me, I want to be an education welfare officer, what does it actually take, right? Like what
Yeah.
kind of education should they be focusing on? What skills are really important?
Well, the sources that we've been looking at, they highlight a few key things. First of all, having that strong academic background in a field like, social work or psychology or education, even something like law can be really valuable. Like those disciplines give you that framework for understanding, human behavior, child development, and just like all the systemic factors that can impact a kid's life.
That makes a lot of sense. You're dealing with like a lot of complex stuff,
Yeah.
but it sounds like it's not just about like, the degree that you have.
No, you're totally right. And a lot of people don't realize that. Like, yes, having that relevant degree is important. It's often like a baseline for a lot of these EWO positions, but it's equally as important to develop like this strong set of transferable skills.
Okay, so we're talking about things like, active listening, being able to empathize with someone, problem solving, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And those are all things that you can like hone through volunteering or, doing some kind of mentorship program or even just like working with young people, even if it's just part-time.
Yeah.
It's about showing employers that you're like truly committed to supporting kids. And that often comes across more in like your experiences than, just what it says on your resume.
So it's not just about like what, it's about like how you use that knowledge, right?
Mhm.
And how you connect with people on a human level,
Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense. And then I imagine like even if you have all of that, you have to stay up to date, right?
Yeah.
Like with everything that's going on in education and like child welfare, mental health, all of that is constantly evolving.
Absolutely. I mean, The field is always changing. There are new policies coming out all the time,
Mhm.
new technologies, best practices are always being updated. So you have to be someone who's committed to that ongoing professional development, whether that looks like, going to conferences or taking some online courses or even just like connecting with other people in the field and seeing, what they're doing.
It's almost like being like a lifelong student in a way.
Yeah, you kind of have to be.
Okay, so let's say like you've done all your research, you've got the qualifications, you've got that empathy, that drive to like really make a difference, and you're ready to take that next step. You're ready to land your dream job, right?
Yeah.
As an EWO.
Right.
What should you expect when you like walk into that interview room?
Well, looking at what RoleCatcher put together, there are a couple of big things that tend to come up a lot in these interviews. Like, obviously, they're going to want to hear about your experience working with kids, but not just like a boring list of, your past jobs and stuff.
Right. It's more about like how you've actually handled stuff,
Mhm.
right? Like the tricky situations you've been in, the challenges you faced, and like what you've learned from all of that.
Exactly. Be ready to like tell some stories, answer those behavioral questions. Like, tell me about a time you had to work with a student who just like totally shut down. Or how did you handle a situation where like a parent and a teacher completely disagreed on what was best for a kid? They want to see that you can think on your feet, like that you can problem solve, that you
Yeah.
can navigate these like sensitive situations without, freaking out.
So yeah, storytelling is huge. Having those examples ready to go, I bet, can really make you stand out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what other advice would you give to someone who's like, prepping for one of these interviews?
Another thing that almost always comes up is like safeguarding and child protection.
Excellent.
That's like priority number one in this role. So brush up on all the like policies and procedures and be ready to talk about how you've, identified and responded to potential risks in the past.
Right. Because they want to know that you're not just there for like the academic side of things,
Yeah.
right? You're really invested in the safety and the well-being of like literally every single student.
Exactly. And while we're talking about that, it's also good to like be able to talk about how you stay up to date.
Mm.
Like what are you reading? What conferences are you going to? Because things are changing so fast and education and like child welfare and mental health and employers want to see that you're, on top of it all.
Yeah, being able to show that you're never done learning, that you're passionate about this, that's huge.
It really is.
This has been so fascinating, honestly. And honestly, I feel like I've learned so much about what it actually means to be an EWO. Like, it's clearly not easy, but it takes such a unique set of skills, that empathy, that resilience, and like that true dedication to being there for young people.
And in a world where, like, let's face it, kids are dealing with more and more stuff all the time. EWOs are more important now than ever. They're the ones who are like behind the scenes working so hard to make sure that every student has the chance to thrive.
100%. So if you're listening to this and, something's clicking for you, if you feel that pull to like really make a difference, I say go for it. Explore this career path because honestly, the world needs more people like you, people who are passionate and compassionate and dedicated, helping young people. And hey, who knows? Maybe you'll be the one giving us advice on a future episode. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.